Show me the destination. So I know the journey is worth it.
Beat your ass and hide the Bible if God watching.
And that's that.
Oh, that's okay. That's actually a pull from our conversation recently. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Did you just write that down after that conversation, or?
I wrote it down the minute it came out of whoever said it. It was me or you.
It was definitely you.
Okay.
You
I attributed it to me on my phone. I went Alex Cupid, and then I was like, it might not be me, but who knows?
No, I'll allow you that one.
Can't wait for like in 5 years' time to sue me for
Yeah.
copyright.
Yeah, so we were talking on the phone.
Imagine us two and Judge Judy.
Oh, I don't know why, but I just imagined us as Judge Judy then.
We are the judge, juror, and executioner. Oh dear. Welcome to City Wales. This is a mental health podcast, and we discuss mental health stuff. This podcast is for everyone, but it doesn't mean it is for you. That's it. I've said it 16 times, and I love saying it, but at a point we can be more succinct. Okay, like I think the people who are listening to this episode here, they're either somehow finding this for the first time, or they've listened to all the previous 15 episodes. So I feel like they should understand.
Well, do you ever randomly end up listening to a podcast a certain number of episodes in? I mean, I have done with a couple, but normally you don't require an intro.
Podcast? This podcast comes on my Apple podcast randomly. I'll like finish listening to the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project, and it will automatically play to the latest episode of this podcast, and I'm just like, well, great.
Just got such a just dip in quality.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I'm just like, great. This is nothing. This is pointless. I have to like try and skip it. I'm like, oh, maybe I should let it play for a little bit for the algorithm. I'm like, the algorithm isn't worth my torture. Skip.
Don't worry, I'm doing all of that for us. It's fine.
Yeah, you are the all 16 listeners of. Actually, to be honest, our last episode, I haven't even checked it, but I'm imagining that it's higher than normal, and I actually don't know why.
Because the episode before that was great. I don't know. You know what's what's funny though? I completely forgot about this last time we recorded, but my mum does listen to the podcast now. I don't know how many episodes in we've gotten. She is, but I know the last time I spoke to her, which was about 2 weeks ago, I think she'd listened to like 3 normal episodes and the school episode at the time. Like literally, she sent a message to the family WhatsApp, which was like, "Oh, really enjoying the podcast, blah blah blah." And no, Joe, I didn't know that about you. Did get away with that thing in school or whatever. I didn't know about that thing in school. Like I didn't know that you bunked off as much as we thought. And my brother was just like fucking laughing like in the chat.
And now you're grounded forever.
And I was like, thank you for listening to my content.
You snitched on yourself.
But it was it was great, and we had a conversation about it actually. And it is funny because she doesn't really she doesn't experience the thing that you and I somewhat experience of like, yeah, no, the quality of it is okay. Like at the beginning, it's not necessarily great, and a super high. I was about to say understanding, but that's the wrong word. Like, she's not used to listening to this kind of content anyway, and she knows what we're like in real life because obviously we've just had conversations with her in real life in the garden and all that. So she was just like, "Oh, it was nice listening to you talking, and I think you're really good talking to each other," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, thank you, it's very nice." So yeah, eventually she might listen to this one as well. I don't know, depends if she keeps it up, but she's getting through it apparently. So
hi, Mum.
Yeah, hi, Mum. I have a story to tell.
Polish.
Before we get into some stuff, because this is going to be quite a different episode probably to the last one in many ways, but I did want to say this story. Fuck off, phone. So this is why my phone is sometimes on silent, because I turn it off for the podcast and I just forget to take it off.
My phone is always on silent. I don't think it's ever been loud.
This is why I don't pick you up sometimes. I'm just like, oh shit, you called me. Even if that's not true. So a slight explanation of what my expectations were. There is a sort of when you go on these inclusive holidays, you're. I this is what I was told by Demi and Kestis. They said to me, explaining what it was like when they went to Tunisia and all of that. They said there'll be like a hotel rep there, someone who will basically be able to help organize trips for you to do, like tours and things like that, or going on quad bikes, or going on a boat somewhere. You know what I mean? Like all the kind of things you expect on a holiday. And this is kind of true almost everywhere. But this is a big thing in Tunisia because obviously you're not in a country where it's as easy to. Most people in England who are English, for example, don't know Arabic or anything like that. So it clearly makes a lot of sense that there's going to have to be a bit more of that translation to help make sure that that happens. And the hotel essentially is, or the reps or whatever, the companies involved are essentially having a deal with certain other companies in order to get their business and blah blah blah. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole tourist information style thing. So I knew that, and we were told like, yeah, tomorrow there'll be a rep and then you go with them and stuff. And I thought, okay, cool. When we actually got there, I was like, okay, cool, bro. So I told you that the first night was a bit of a drinky night because we were so fucking just out of it, and we were just like, you know what, fuck it. This day is we're not going to get anything out of this day if we don't do something right now. And at the same time, the next day was like, probably wasn't going to be much anyway because we're still recovering. So then we drank to make sure that would be the case. But what happened was I was still like really set on going to this rep thing, and I think it was at like 10:30 or 11 o'clock or something like that. So I got up early enough. Kez was very tired and essentially hungover. So I went down on my own. Now, I didn't know what kind of was to expect, but in my head, because of the way it's described to me, that I would go down, there would be some rep there, probably would take us to a room of the hotel and have a conversation with us, etc. So I went down, and lo and behold, there were a bunch of people there. I had my little notebook and everything like that, so I could take notes during it and bring it back and show Kestis. So we went in there, or I went into the lobby, saw the big lobby, saw there was a bunch of people there, and I even asked. I went up to someone, and of course the guests are from everywhere. So this person happened to be Polish, this guest, and didn't understand what I was saying. So he looks over to this woman, and this woman comes over, like it calls over to this woman and asks her to come over to translate. And she comes over, and I say like, "Oh, is this the place for the holiday representative in the meeting and that?" And she was like, "Yes." So I thought, brilliant, I'm in the right place. So out comes someone who takes us over to a room, and it begins. And she starts off by speaking in Polish, this representative. And I thought, okay, well, obviously there's going to be people with different languages here. So there's going to be lots of, so, maybe she knows because of the group that's here that there just happens to be a lot of Polish. So she's going to start with that and continue on. So I thought, okay, cool. And I started, and I was in there, had my notebook open, trying to I was literally listening to the Polish, trying to figure out what she was saying, in like certain elements she was saying that I could actually write down. Like I heard El Gem, and I heard like a bunch of place names and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. So I made a few notes in order to like come back later and then fill them in more accurately with what it was. The meeting is going on for a while, and she doesn't stop speaking Polish at any point. And I'm like, okay. And over this time period, I'm beginning to realize that of the people in the room, I'm like scanning the room to basically see like, oh, who in this moment is listening to her, understanding what she's saying, and who isn't, right? I'm like looking out for English people or French people or whatever that might be in the room. And there seems to be a lot of people who, like, there were a few people who I'm like, okay, I think you don't understand, so you're like me. And I was like counting in the room, I was like, oh, there's probably like 4 or 5 of us who aren't speaking Polish. And I was like, oh, there must be just a big Polish group that came. And that's what it is. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool to have like a bunch of people who went on holiday together in a big hotel, and they all know each other and they're Polish or whatever. But this is incredibly embarrassing that I had these ideas. But you make up excuses for yourself as you're going along.
Yeah.
because it makes sense, right? You're trying to make sense of the situation. And as I understood it, it was a hotel rep. What I wasn't aware of is that it's described as a hotel rep by my friends, but what they really mean is a company, because I flew with EasyJet. So we had a representative for EasyJet that was coming and telling us about stuff. There was an EasyJet app that we could scan and look stuff up. We didn't even need to go to a meeting, just scan the QR code. As it went on, I began to realize that those people I was looking at earlier, I noticed, oh wait, hold on, they understood what she's just said there. Like they reacted to it. And I thought, okay. And then we're getting into like an hour plus of time where she's speaking Polish to the group. And I am in a situation where I'm like, I don't know when this is going to, I guess I'll wait to the end and then I'll go over and speak to her. So it turns out that everyone spoke Polish, because what had happened is that I had joined in the meeting of a Polish flight company. And so not only was everyone there Polish, but they'd come from the same flight, and they were also part of a thing with touring, because the person who spoke to me earlier, the one who translated for the man, wasn't with them as a holiday goer. They were there as a tour organizer, like a holiday organizer for the people there. So like they had all the money and were doing a lot of the transactions and were asking everyone like, oh, do you want to do this and that? So I spent an hour and a half in a room with a bunch of people who knew that I wasn't Polish, listening to them talk in Polish about everything and have no idea what was going on. And after the meeting was finished and they all hung around for a while, like actually organizing what they were going to do, and then went off. We're looking at like an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes. By this point, my friend is like ready to come down and go to lunch. So he's waiting essentially at lunch for me. And I'm like finishing up here because it's been so long. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on. And I go over to the woman and I'm like, oh, like, do you mind just telling me what there is? I kind of got a few things because, you know, I learned a bit of Polish recently. But I didn't really understand anything. I didn't really understand what like was available. I don't know how much things are and things like that. And she basically says, right, so all of the things that we're doing, like if you were to go to any of the ones that I have, they would be speaking Polish. Like any tour that you go on or anything like that, they're going to be speaking Polish. So I had entirely just joined the completely wrong thing. When I came out and met Kessis in the lobby before we went to lunch, clear as day, you can see over in the corner, there is a tiny table with an EasyJet like sign next to it. And there's just a woman sitting there, like hanging around for people who might come up and ask about stuff. And I completely fucking missed it because I went in there and where everyone was in the lobby was just this one group of people from a Polish flight that had come and was organized by a single person. So I just spent about 2 hours of my life in a weird situation, like literally just unaware of what was happening and thinking like, oh yeah, well this is normal. Like eventually it's going to come round to me and I'll get my turn. Not even remotely. It was ridiculous. The not the leap in logic, but the assumptions I was having to make along the way in order to make sense of what was happening. It was truly awe-inspiring at the end of it, realizing, okay, I just was truly confused about so many things, and it all comes to a head when suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is no, I'm just all I could think about afterwards was being in the room with everyone who knows I'm not Polish, who is part of this Polish tour, who are together, looking at me and thinking, why is he here? Why is this guy here who we know doesn't understand what's going on? Oh man, that was hilarious. And the first day of the trip, like first actual day of the trip.
But they could have told you. Well, what? Why didn't you say anything? You wait an hour and a half.
Because, like I said, I thought they were going to go language by language. And yes, it was taking a long time, but it was in my realization. But like, I was already invested, right? I was already there for so long. And I thought, I don't know what is happening, but clearly almost everyone here seems to be Polish. So I get that they're going to take a bunch of time. And I'm sure that it's, and I was just chilling. I was hungover. So like, I was just willing to kind of just hang around and not really deal with anything. But I mean, there's something about my patience in that moment that I have to respect, because I genuinely was able to just sit there listening to all this, and I was genuinely like trying to understand Polish. I was like listening and like trying to make notes based on it, and I was having a good time, but I genuinely didn't know how else to do anything. Like I didn't want to. I didn't have any reason to ask because I genuinely thought, well, this is it. Like this is the hotel rep. This isn't like some specific company or whatever. Like I didn't have enough clues for the way my brain works to go, oh, this is a company specifically, and my company is somewhere else, and I should be going there instead. The real fuckery was that the woman initially who I spoke to, who translated, was like, "Oh yeah, this is the meeting," not making her own understanding that I clearly wasn't Polish and wouldn't understand anything. But she was just, and literally, I'm not even joking. She came up to me at the end, and she didn't even say anything then. She was like, "Oh, I don't even remember what conversation she had, but I remember saying like, "Oh yeah, I've been trying to learn in Polish recently," and she was like, "Oh, did you understand anything?" And I said, "No." No, not really. I didn't. No, I not really. I didn't have any kind of idea what was going on. But she still didn't even say anything after that. She didn't make any sort of claims one way or the other. And it was only until later on that evening, or maybe like the day after, that I realized that she was this person who was like looking after the group, because we were at dinner and I saw them in the dinner area, and she was like going from table to table talking to everyone in this very like and then talking to like a hotel staff. And I realized that she was like kind of basically organizing a bunch of stuff, and I was like, fuck me, like this, like I thought that this woman just happened to be with the group and she could speak English, not that she was this like authority figure within the whole process. And I was like, fuck me. But it was brilliant. It was such a brilliant moment that I had to tell Kes this, and he just couldn't fucking stop laughing at me for being in that situation for so long. I didn't know how else to figure any of it.
I can't that. I don't actually know how you did it.
I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to say anything. I had no reason to like talk to someone like if I'd just spoken to a guy to my left and he was like, he couldn't speak English either at all, and then maybe he would have said something to someone else, and then someone would have gone like, do you speak Polish at all? And then I'm like, no. Maybe it would have come about. But I just didn't see how. I couldn't see. I both couldn't see how the situation was wrong in a way that was so truly wrong. Like there was such a true level of misunderstanding that had been made. So yeah, me and Kessis immediately just went to this EasyJet person and spoke to her, and basically realized that you could just scan this QR code and look at all of them, and you didn't have to go to any meeting anyway. So I got up early, and I was like being such a good boy. I took fucking notebook and took notes, and it just meant absolutely nothing. So yeah, just the weirdest start, but it really broke the ice for me. I think I couldn't feel any more embarrassed. To be fair, I actually somehow came out of that not feeling too embarrassed. Weirdly, I just felt like I didn't like I truly gained some insight about my understanding of how any of this works. Like it really shows that I have no concept of what holiday making is like for most people who do these things, because it's just not a thing I've ever done in my life. Oh man, but yeah.
Was that like the last holiday story you have?
I think that I'm trying to remember if there's any other. At one point, the only other thing I can remember is that at one point I got shisha, and I asked for a flavor which I remember in a certain way, which was not true. And when I asked for it, the guy said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've had shisha before. Having had shisha far too many years ago. By the way, do not condone shisha or drugs or anything like that. Just generally speaking, whatever. Shisha's not good for you. Was just doing it, and I did it once. I've done it a few times in the past.
Far-right Republican, anti-drug.
I don't know if they are, and shisha is just tobacco, so it's not an illegal drug. And as it turns out, this flavor is a very, very mild flavor, and it's not that like flavorful. So Kessa's just like hated it, and I was like, man, I wish I'd listened to the guy rather than fucking trying to come up with it on my own, like what the flavor should be. Yeah, don't pick apple unless you know what it's like. but it's not that interesting if you're
I
as a
do
flavor.
think that shisha might be somewhat fraudulent.
It's not.
In like, I've have it twice in my life. I remember we were like 16, 17. No, it should have been older. Yeah, it was
By the
with
time we
you.
had it, we were 18. Yeah.
Yeah, we were 18. And we went into this like stupid little place in like Hackney Wick, which
Yep.
it was in the midst of gentrification. Now it's in full gentrification. It's like this really stupid place. You have to pay like £5 to enter or some fucking bollock. And then we were like, here's the shisha. We have to share the fucking pipe and shit. And I remember everyone going, oh, I'm so high. I would to smack the shit out all y'all dumbass niggas because it was a fraud.
Firstly, it doesn't make you high. That's true.
Just like bubble tea, okay? And
now we're getting entirely out of whack.
Fraudulent. But bubble tea and shisha are the two fraudulent things, okay? Like
Firstly,
shisha
never claims to make you high. It's tobacco. There's nothing more to it.
It's still
tobacco.
A fraud. It's still stylistically, artificially, all the shishalies, all the ishalies in the world, fraud. Just like bubble tea, okay? Bubble tea and the bus that said £350 million to the NHS, they're the same. Fraudulent. Lie. Same as shisha.
Okay.
Like, that's it. That's all.
To be clear, shisha is a tradition. Is an Arabic tradition that has a lot of history, and I respect its culture, the culture around it.
Traditions like die.
However, there isn't any. I'm not saying that any of that exists in the UK when we were having it. Although the place we got it from was one of the best places I've ever been to for it. So,
for a guy who's not condoning it,
I'm not condoning it,
but you're not quite saying that you're against. Like, condoning it means that you're saying it shouldn't really be a thing. But then you're also not saying that you're against it. Are you a far right Republican who wants to censor people's ability to have drugs, Joe? Or are you for the people to do whatever they want?
I don't condone or condemn the substance, is what I'm saying. To condone it is to say that you think people should have it, right? And condemn means that you think they shouldn't. I am not taking a stance one way or the other. I'm saying I have done it, but I'm not saying that you should.
There's a perfect question I could ask you.
Sure.
About what you condemn, but I'm just not going to do it.
Coward.
I am. I am. Because, do you know what? When we have Norman Finkelstein on our show, then you could ask him that question.
I don't know what question. You haven't told me what it is. I don't know what question it is.
You know the question.
I don't.
About what you condemn.
I don't. How dare you?
How was my week? Oh, my week is great.
Yeah. So, how has things been? We have a lot to talk about on some of this, I think. How have you been to start with?
I'm now officially on half term. I'm getting cooked.
Ooh.
So things of note. There's actually not been much of note actually. I'm keeping the thing that we talked about yesterday or day before yesterday under wrap because that's smart. I realized something. Anyone I interact who follows me on Instagram, by product, that's not the right word I'm looking. By any circumstance, will then see this podcast exists. I'm thinking to myself, there you go, that's it. But also, they will then know that this show exists, and also they will also I don't know if they'll listen to the first episode or not, because that's the worst episode to listen. A good jumping off point, a good jumping on point is probably episode 3 or 4, or even 10. So I'm thinking to myself, if I were to date somebody and they see and hear this, and they hear, well, there's only so much they can hear, right? We've discussed Dignitas, we have discussed Lucy Letby, we have condemned and uncondemned and said a traditional tobacco thing should die. Well,
yeah. There's a lot of eyes going on. I feel rather than we's, but
we've taken my poetry and attributed it to Nazis. That's solely you.
That one is me. Yeah.
I'm sure we've discussed Kevin Spacey somewhere along the line. If you haven't, then we should. But
you did in the first fucking episode. I remember this. I
There
remember
we
thinking
go.
my mum listened to that when she told me. I was like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that my mum's heard now. Great.
So I'm thinking, at what point then do we now, like, if someone who like either of us date, actually, let's think purely romantically here. Like, let's say you get a girlfriend, okay, and my
Bit
cat has me on it,
narcissistic, but okay.
but let's just say you
Okay.
and you're dating her right now, and she's going, "Hey, I'm gonna check out." He mentioned she has a podcast, and she goes, "What's your podcast called?" I feel like you're trying to delay and be like, we're working on it." Like, I don't know
Nah.
whether you tell her or not.
No, I would tell her.
And then, what would be the worst possible thing she could hear from? Like, I feel like this straight up is probably the Kevin Spacey bit in the very first episode.
I don't think so. Well, the the thing is that I don't really think there's anything that wouldn't. Well, I might get a message about something, but I don't think there's anything that we have said nor will ever say that I'm so like. If I have a problem with it, then I would worry, right? Like, but even then, if I had a problem with it, then in the actual episode, I will talk about why I have a problem with it. I don't think there's anything that we've said or ever say that's going to go over a line that I personally have. It might be over a line that they have, but then that's a thing to talk about. That's not like I don't mind them hearing. Also, I mean, in a comic context, in a comedic context, things that I've heard, things that we have talked about privately and on here, or things that I've heard at like comedy shows, like Rick Shaw or whatever. Rick Shaw. His name can't be Rick Shaw. Sorry, I just said that, and I'm like, it can't actually just be Rick Shaw. Hold on, what is his name? It is something like Rick Shaw,
Rick Shaw,
but it's
who's
not.
Rick
It's not
Shaw?
Rick Shaw. It is. He's the comedian. He's the Paralympian. What the fuck was what
Rick
was his
Shaw.
full? It's not. It's not Rick Shaw, but it's pretty close to it. It's something Shaw. It's like George. Isn't it George Bernard Shaw or something like that?
That is a playwright, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that is a probably right. Hold on.
uh,
Oh my god, I don't know how to find him.
This has been a car crash.
Wait. It's not
Like,
Rick Shaw. Why did I say Rick Shaw? That's the
his name
worst
is
part.
Rick Shaw. Oh, Jesus.
Oh fuck. No,
While
not
you
Rishi
figure out that,
Sunak. Fuck him.
how have you gotten there? How have you gotten there? While you figure that out, I'm gonna drop what I've been doing. I've been playing games. So I've been playing the
Sorry,
game
let
High
me
on Life.
finish my point because the name doesn't
Oh,
matter.
I thought you were looking for Rick Shaw.
I'm gonna find him eventually, but let me finish my point because that's much more
Please.
important. We can't just move away from. So the point is that if I like there like in that context, he was doing comedy about the fact that he is, as he literally puts it and says, like the word in itself is not like a problem, like the word spastic, for example, is a literal scientific term which a surgeon, like a doctor, will use with him, for example, and it's not a problem, right? That is literally just talk. It's to do with like muscle tension. That's what it's referring to. The use of it as a slur has been used in a context with him and him talking about it and him making fun of himself and like of his disability and also other things. It's obviously it's funny. It's not the same as obviously when we're just as if I was saying something horrible about some guy. Now I do need to get his name, otherwise all of this is going to sound pretty fucking bad from my part. So let me do that while you continue.
While Joe finds Rick Shaw,
While I look for Rick Shaw.
have you literally Google searched the name Rick Shaw? Because
I don't think I don't dare do it.
I am now doing it. Rick Shaw is a American disc jockey who died in 2017. Yeah. So anyway, I've been playing games recently, and I've been playing the game High on Life. I can't remember if I mentioned that on last week's episode or not.
You mentioned it to me at least.
But yeah, I've been playing High on Life, which is a game made by the people who made Rick and Morty. So it's a lot of their really great. I've also been playing a game called Now I've Done It. Now I've Done It. Now I've Done It. You. And I have to figure out what his name is again. This is Dave the Diver. There we go. I've been playing Dave the Diver. It's a sheer game where you dive for fish, you catch fish, and then you sell it at a sushi restaurant where you cook it. No, guys,
Oh, I think Demi's played it. Yeah.
let me tell you right here, right now, okay? That's a game. That is a proper, this is a game. You're playing a game. You are enjoying the game. And I could thoroughly recommend High on Life and Dave the Diver to you all. That is literally all I have to offer. In Football Manager, I've finally agreed to go out on loan. So 18-year-old or 17 or 18-year-old me is now playing for Woking on loan from Red Bull London. That's my Football Manager save update. Leicester tried to sign Ryan, and I've had to turn down offers. You're currently on loan at Braintree, and you're now a full Cuban international.
No.
So you now play for the Cuban national team. Things are going well in the world of Football Manager. Everything else is shit, but things are going well.
Ricky Balshaw.
Wow, that is a lot different to Rickshaw.
Hold on. No. Ricky Balshaw is not that far off from Rickshaw. Like, obviously, there are completely different notions when I say
A
one over the
rickshaw
other.
is literally a mode of transport through
I
parts of
know.
London.
But come on, that can't be that far off. It's literally the same first name, and then there's one syllable in the surname. That's it. Like, come on, give me credit.
I can't. Like,
Fuck you, Al Q. Fuck you, Al Q.
I just think that, you know, we should probably have the name ready. That's all I'm thinking. That's all I'm saying.
It came off the top of my head. He had cerebral palsy, blah blah blah. So yeah, it just to make that point, to the point of a hypothetical in that scenario. I mean, are you saying to me that you would go out of your way to not have someone listen to your podcast?
Oh yeah. I'm trying to avoid that eventuality because I'm pretty sure that, like, you have to be on board with my humor from the get-go. And I feel like you need to be embedded into it first. I feel like it's like a teasing process. Like, I don't think I can go head first into the, like, seeing something awful and going, well, I don't know. I can't give an example of a horrific joke I've made into the show. Probably heard of it. I don't want to dump that onto somebody via a podcast and they hear it and they're like, wow, this is bad. Just like his friend. They're both bad.
But
you know?
to be honest, I think most people's like humor extends quite far in that regard. Like
I don't
I mean,
know.
I understand why you reacted so badly, like also like dramatically when I said that my mum's now watching it, like listening to it. Like, and I imagine
To be honest, your mum is the least of my worries in terms of people listening. I don't mind.
oh sure, but the point is that like, you know, there's like it's not like we've had like directly those jokes with my mum. It's not like that's a scenario that's come up. So
But we will now.
oh, now yeah. Well, that's the point though. Like, surely in a relationship scenario, surely you would want them to know that this is an aspect of that we could tap into pretty
The world we're
quickly.
living in, they're going to find the podcast before we actually officially become in a relationship. That is the thing.
Well, that's a more interesting conversation about like that sort of parasocial element, right? Of like meeting someone who knows you without you having met them, right?
But yeah, like, 'cause we've already gotten emails from people who watch the show or watch it, listen. So it's like, well, I also message from people who we actually know in real life who are being like, hey, this is really cool, or this is like not, as one of my friends said, the show isn't shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, they're hearing this, but they've also been embedded into the process. They've seen it. They've seen how my humor and your humor's formed. They haven't seen people who don't know us. If they don't like it, then they just click off. But people who know us and go, hey, here's a podcast. Okay. What the hell are they on about? Oh my goodness.
But this is probably an interesting question, even now. How many of you knew either of us prior to this? Like, we're talking about this like this is such a big thing, like, or that we're doing such a big thing. But like, you know, I imagine it's like maybe a few people who have just listened to this and are still listening, right? That we don't know. Like, there's got to be some people who are doing that.
Yeah, probably.
It's not all people we know.
Oh no, it definitely isn't. Because like the listeners in Mexico, for example.
Oh,
yeah,
right, of course, yeah, in Vietnam.
Yeah, like I don't think we know them. Actually, let's just check our analytics as we enter the latter stage of this episode, which has been a complete car crash, but it's my favorite type of car. Everybody dies. We
So
have a
to be
listener
clear,
from Sweden.
To be clear, because I feel like this is what you said earlier. You don't want to talk about what we were talking about 2 days ago.
No,
Can I ask why?
because they could easily listen to this.
What do you mean? Sorry.
Whoever it is can listen to this episode and be like, "Hey, I'm being referenced on the show," and we'll have no idea what the hell. Run.
But you don't. To be honest, I actually don't even know who you mean, because that's not the part I was thinking about talking about anyway.
So what are you talking about then?
There's more than one aspect to, like, I wasn't going to mention anyone if that was a worry.
But I don't want, because, like, for me, I've had it where I've written a poem and I've released a poem on Instagram. And it's been about absolutely nobody, but I've had 3 people claim it's about them. So maybe it's me being burned. Also, you listened to the show in Tunisia, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So there's 2 downloads from Tunisia here.
That's probably me. Yeah, that's probably me.
And then there's one in Sweden.
Guessed. Yes, and yeah, I forgot Sweden.
Did you go to Sweden?
No, I didn't go to Sweden. That's no. That's not. That's a original.
It's scary because I'm going to Sweden in a couple of months now, and you know, if they're already fans of the Silly Wales experience, when I get there, they should be waiting with, like, you know,
the whole of Sweden's going to be waiting for you to get out the plane.
They should.
It's going to be like the Beatles landing in America.
There should be a live whale in a massive tank with a hat on, just like our actual whale. Okay, and they should be waiting for us, or just for me, because you're not there. But I want there to be an imaginary cardboard cutout of you, and I'll be signing everyone's autographs, and I'll be like, "Hello, I am a Silly Whale." Noisy.
God, this already is getting a car crash. No, the thing I wanted to talk about, to be clear, was just about how I've been having it a bit more different, like been having it a bit rough recently. Nothing to do with anyone, if that's what you're.
Oh, you talk about yourself. I thought I was talking about me.
We talked about multiple things. We talked about lots of things.
You know.
That's why when you were like, keep it under wraps, I was like, why? Like, what about our mental health podcast has made you feel that talking about our mental health was something we should keep under wraps?
Oh,
I was like, this is very confusing.
Like, mental health is fine. If you want to kill us, as you can. Like, I'm ready to die.
All right, thank you.
I was more thinking about the thing that I did a couple of days ago. That was good.
Right.
I was talking about that.
Yeah, I wasn't.
What?
The narcissism
Why isn't
is
it all about me?
The ego is so high.
Because things are never about me, Joe. This is a podcast about me. Like,
yeah, and I'm talking, so it must be about me. That's the whole point.
No. You know?
No, I so just to actually get somewhere with this and not completely just spiral, I have had it rough recently, mentally. I've been dealing with a bit. The first day I came back, literally the day of the Sunday that I was back from Tunisia, I started watching YouTube for the entire day, and the day after. It was rough. I didn't enjoy it. It was not a good experience, and I've been having a rough time since. I've been struggling a bit. And a little bit's maybe putting it a bit too, is a bit slightly underestimating it slightly. It's and the first week I came back as well, I had a 6-day job week where I did like full time, but over 6 days from Thursday to Tuesday. So I not only like after a period of time, like after a break, came back and then did way more than I'm used to in a way that was definitely really overwhelming after everything. And I'd already like had a real rough experience. I don't know what it is, but I do think that I'm just not very good with like, to a certain extent, I'm actually quite adaptable. But I think I'm just a person who can have their routine, if you can call anything that I have a routine, it can be really disrupted, right? And if I don't kind of have a structure to work around, then that disruption is really has a really huge impact on me. And when I say it has a huge impact, what I mean is that I completely close off from everyone and just I don't eat properly. I don't like look after myself properly. These kind of things, and I become sort of reclusive and so on. And it's so weird because even now, as a 27-year-old, not even that far from 28 now, and I still have moments where I'm in my bed hearing like someone else in the house, even though I have no problem with these people whatsoever, literally none, with the people I'm living with currently. And I will hear them, and I will feel embarrassed to exist, to leave, and for them to see me in the state I'm in, whatever it might be. And it takes a long time for me to basically like build up the energy to feel okay with just existing as a person, like around them. And it's and I know times in my life where it was chronically bad, like when that was the case, where I was like, I'm not leaving my room, and I would refuse to leave my room all day because at every point in the day I was worried about, going outside. This was the thing I was talking about on that night when I was talking about like being at uni, where you always heard of the people who in their like flat, like in their halls, they were the person who stayed in their room and never left. You know what I mean? And obviously for some of those people, it's not an anxiety based thing or whatever. But for me, it absolutely was. And I've always, for whatever reason, people have never like given me shit for it. They've generally always been like relatively encouraging. Not so much like, knock on the door, come into my room and be like, hey, like, what's up? Like, hey, are you okay? Kind of thing. Not like that level of maturity or nuance, but come at least like, wanting me to be involved with things and so on, and not being shitty, I guess, which is the right way of thinking about it. But I've definitely had, like, there was an entire year where actually, there's 2 separate years I can think of where it started out really good and then something happened. And then from that point on, I couldn't face being around, being around either certain individuals or the entire house. And I would just kind of like completely close myself off. And it became not only really awkward, but genuinely like some of the saddest years of my life in those moments. And I every single year I had a new group of people that I lived with when I was at uni. So it was quite we will do a presents episode about post secondary school, because I think it's quite a big one for both of us. Because it's also where there's a big sort of split off for both of us. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to hear more of the details of your experience, because I know of what you did, but and stuff. But there is like a gap of like 2 to 3 years where I don't quite have the knowledge of what your life was like. So yeah, it's sort of shades of that, echoes of that, hearkenings of that more recently, and I guess I'm back at day one essentially again with sobriety, which sucks. Honestly, that was one of the shittiest things about it, was that feeling. And I have now looked up. My mum sent me an article for, I think it was from the Guardian, which talked about ITAA, which was the Internet and Technology Addiction Anonymous, which is like a 12-step program style fellowship, I think is what they're called, like a group, where that you can like book meetings and things like that. I don't know how I feel about engaging in that. I don't think it's a bad thing, so I should probably do it. But there is a part of me that's just kind of naturally, I don't know. I probably should. So I'll look into it a bit more. But because honestly, anything like at this point, it probably is quite a pivotal moment to do it. But definitely, all the things like that are quite. I don't know how to describe it. Freaky is the wrong word, but it feels like it feels like the right word at the same time. Just like not really sure about engaging with that kind of stuff. I think just because it's a state of being quite vulnerable, and having to do the kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous thing where you have to stand up and be like, yes, I'm an internet and technology addict, and it's like, oh God, just that phrase alone, it's like so weird. And but I like the fact that it is it is being considered in as serious. I think is the big part, right? And very much in it's the kind of experience. I think it's described as it's basically the same as gambling addiction. It's a behavioral addiction. It's a process addiction. So it's the chemicals that you produce as a result of a particular behavior cause you to do that behavior over and over again. And it is being recognized, though. I don't think it's an officially recognized thing, but it's being recognized at some level because there are obviously people getting together and trying to deal with it. So there's, that's a good feeling. At least I like seeing that. That makes me feel better. But there's definitely a part of me that's like, man, I even just removing that for a second and how my experience has been with this, there is a little bit of a dampener on my mood generally, and it has. And I think I described to you that I've generally been feeling a lot less what's the word? Like, I haven't been feeling as good recently. Like, I've been getting less enjoyment out of things, and I think that there's something to say about being at that point when you haven't been engaging with content like that and things where like your brain is somewhat starved and is really not finding the benefit from anything, and you're trying to have to get through the dates without like giving in to that temptation, which it's hard to explain addiction to a certain extent to people, because I know that I'm your case study, as it turns out, for addiction, or I'm like you're the person you think of when you think of addiction now, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
The it, and I kind of try to describe, there's this feeling where I know cognitively that there's no difference between the body of the person who is tempted and ends up down the rabbit hole and is in those really like kind of mired in the addiction, versus the one that's talking right now, kind of trying to speak cognitively and rationally, and is not currently feeling those pangs of wanting to engage with it. But the feeling is almost, there's almost like there's levels of desires that I have, and the desire I have right now, which feels like a more mature, rational, sophisticated, nuanced, and almost more like self-caring attitude, doesn't want me to engage with it. But the person who's actually doing it feels like they are a different man with or a different person with different desires and different ideas about the world completely, and they just don't they're not the same person. The feeling of like, as I think you came up with it, the idea of like the driver in like a what do they call it, like Grand Prix or whatever, and then like the navigator, like who's talking to them, or
the rally driver.
Yeah,
You
like
have
in
the driver, and then you have the navigator who tells you how fast and how like slow and which corners to go and all that stuff.
Yeah, how to kind of does a lot of the thinking for you and preparing you and stuff like that. And it feels like that, but it feels like the two individuals are don't speak the same language to each other, but neither of them can, and both of them think that they're doing the right thing, but neither of them have the capacity to like explain to one another that they think that they're doing the right thing. And because it really feels like I'm one or the other. It doesn't feel like I can like kind of shift or synthesize a personality between the two. Because it's really fucking easy to speak like this and talk like this when I don't have the feelings of addiction going on. It's really easy for me to do that. But as soon as it comes up, I can't speak this way anymore. I can't think this way. Like, I genuinely have moments where I will have a thought in my mind and start talking about it. And in those moments, like I'll talk out loud, because I talk out loud as an individual because for some reason. So I'll just talk to myself a lot. And this is why I babble. And there are those moments where I'm talking to myself and I'm like, and I'll get a certain point in, and then my brain will start to feel that pang again. And then I'll become mute. Like I'll stop talking and I won't want to talk anymore, and I'll kind of like forget what my point was completely, and not in like I just lost the plot kind of thing, but more like my motivation literally ran out to speak and think, and it just vanished. And now you have this guy in the driver's seat who's really wanting to just kind of like be, satiated by some behavior which I have developed over 2 decades, right? Or not quite 2 decades, but a version of this has occurred over 2 decades or whatever. And the feeling of wanting to have very revolutionary change is difficult, but because you can't completely uproot it's not even a personality. It's you're having to uproot like the 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 material basis for how your brain, not even material. I'm struggling to describe this. The architecture of your brain to completely change how that works, like the way that your brain literally builds itself up, is by continuously repeating things and then building up these connections. That's how me and you can talk to each other in English right now, or at least have a language that we share, right? Because otherwise none of this would make any sense. We both have to kind of build up like a sense of how to speak in a way in which our meanings tend to be pretty similar to one another, so that we understand what one another mean to a certain extent. I have done that over my life, and this behavior has been happening all that time, and I'm having to like completely and utterly destroy these habits and quote unquote routines that I've developed, which don't feel like routines because I don't choose my routine, but I don't think a routine, I guess, doesn't have to be something you voluntarily choose. So just, it's difficult. And if anyone's sort of, I'm sure that there are people who will have versions of this and will either think, I get what you mean, or I don't have to, or maybe will even say something like, I get what you're saying, but I think what you actually mean is this. And I'm not really against that. I don't have like a fully formed understanding of this, and I'm not trying to pick from an actual psychological school of thought around it. I'm not like going into Jungian or Freudian, like, you know, fucking psychology in order to describe everything that I'm talking about. You know, someone will be like, "Oh yeah, that's your id and super ego or something like that," and I'm like, it doesn't really feel like that's how it feels, because that's the way my that's the way my ego can make sense of it. But I know at a certain level that none of that is true, because there isn't two personalities in my head. It's I am me, and there's a moment in which my brain is starved and a moment in which my brain isn't, and something else is more interesting. But it's like like threading the needle of what you want to be, like making yourself what you want to be, while realizing that you can't do that on your own. You have to have some like material. You can't just by thought be a better person, or on by thought be good at something, or not do something, or whatever. You have to like act it. And the action of it is a process that goes on in your brain. So then there's this chicken and egg thing where it's like, well, where does it come from, the beginning of it? And a lot of the time it's because it doesn't come from you. It comes partly from outside, or really it all does externally in a technical sense. But trying to fundamentally change all of that behavior is ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important thing is that it's difficult. So I'll look into this ITAA thing, and maybe I'll find some help there. I don't. I still don't know whether to pursue, like, you know, maybe referrals in relation to the GP and stuff. I really probably should, because at the end of the day, what's the negative in doing so?
Yeah, exactly.
I just also know at a certain level that the way mental health is done in the UK, and I know that like referrals and things like that, that I'm not going to see the benefits of this for so long. But then again, I guess I didn't for autism, but it still mattered that I did it. So I should regardless. And who knows, it might go nowhere. Or it might be like, oh yeah, no, this is not an issue, or this is not an issue. And maybe I'll get something, but it will be like a particular step or whatever in the process.
Like, you don't know how long the waiting list is going to be, because you never know. It could be because of what it is and where you are. Waiting list is a lot shorter as opposed to London.
Yeah, I mean, when I was the autism one was Dorset. It wasn't London in that particular case.
How long was that?
I'm trying to think the exact timeline. I applied in November, I think. Then in February I had my triage, and then April the next year is when I started having phone interviews during COVID, like at the beginning of COVID. So I think in the UK anyway, like the big shift. So I
Yeah.
think so that would have been November 2018, and then it was April 2020 when I actually started having a conversation about it, and describing my entire childhood, other sorts of things, other sorts of questions and things.
Like, effectively, the worst thing that could happen is it takes ages to be seen. So you might as well get yourself on a list of something, right?
Yeah.
Or at least seen, because you don't know what's going to happen, like, post you going to be.
What was it like for you, by the way, with ADHD?
Terrible. It's worth a presents episode itself. But long story short, a lot of just, well, we did actually explain it in the school episode. We're still on most few. It's just long and arduous, and there was very little to no conclusion, because the outcome that people wanted wasn't the outcome that was best for me. So then people wanted me to be in school, so they really wasn't looking at the how and the why of it. Either more willing to throw a label around, be done with. So then it took a long time to get a specific diagnosis, and even to this day, I'm very much like not understanding my own ADHD because of the laziness of like literally everybody around me, family to teachers to anyone that could help, to psychologists, doctors. So it's a long process, but as an adult now, still figuring out what my ADHD is all about with literally zero. Like, it's yeah. I think you're in a better position because you understand like the crux of what it is, and there's a very simplistic thing where you want to stop being reliant on YouTube and videos in general. So there's a direct path, and that could be a symptom of something bigger,
Mm.
but at least you have a main overarching symptom.
Yeah. Truthfully, on this, I have a fear, and this is not really to do with with like any particular diagnosis or anything, but I do have a slight fear in thinking about my life up to this point, and this could change, I know, but I have a slight fear that one day I'll realize that the reason I have some of these issues is because as a human being, don't feel as much about certain things or don't get as much satisfaction from things as other people in a longer context. Like the thing I'm wanting, I might not end up being able to have in the way that other people describe themselves having. Which, to be fair, I might also learn later on that most of that's bullshit and it's actually all an illusion anyway. And largely speaking, everyone is not feeling that way. And I've been misled by media or, I guess media really, yeah, because even if I talk about like poetry, for example, I mean media. So but there is a small part of me that wonders if, because I'm just thinking back to when I was a child and I was still experiencing this, and of course I was experiencing this before YouTube existed, before I even had a games console or anything like that. Like there's and it's one of those things where it leaves me wondering, like in a world where I didn't live in I wasn't born in 1996 and I was born 80 years beforehand. Maybe not, I'm not sure if the middle of Second World War is the First World War is the most is the most poignant one because that's somewhat of a distraction. But you get my point. Like some period of time in the past prior to that, when none of this existed, what kind of person would I have been? And am I one of those? Like, could I have ended up being one of those people who like went down like a really dark path or something like that? Like I just have weird feelings like that sometimes when I think about the kind of person I could have been, because I realize on occasion that I think of myself, generally speaking, not as a good person but as trying to be a good person. But I don't think that me being this way has anything to do with something, with a tendency that I actually have as a human being, like from an emotional or place or anything like that. Like I think that's entirely because of very, very important directions that certain people in my life have had on me, including yourself. And that I really could have become quite a monster in certain ways with little to no, without particular guidance. Not because I was guided towards being a monster, but specifically that I could have been that just kind of naturally based on the way that I generally feel about things. I know it's a slightly off kilter statement to be making at this point, but if for some reason I've felt that before, especially when I think about like growing up and stuff like that. So, and how I used to feel as a kid, and how I imagine it could develop, especially also when I look at other people and I see how other people are, and I think to myself, like, I could have absolutely been that person that I currently think is an absolute shithead and worse words besides. And I don't, and that makes me more worried. It doesn't make me worried about anything in particular, apart from me just thinking when I eventually get to the bottom of all of this and I start querying myself to the point that I actually truly begin to understand my brain, my mind, the challenges I'm going to have to face, etc. There's a part of me that worries that I'm the person who ends up going down these paths because I'm someone who is incapable of enjoying the world the way other people do.
Yeah, like I'll be interested to see what you get out, and I'll also be thinking it'll be useful for other people as well, and that's a good like resource for them. Like
Hmm.
we have people listening to this show, so I'm sure that they follow along so far. So
God, I
maybe
hope
it's a
so.
good step.
God, I hope so.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things we just have to like. This is down to you. These are the choices that you have to make, and then we have to battle and work from there. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I couldn't give you the answer. Nor do I know that I'm not expecting.
No, I also think if you were telling me this, I wouldn't know how to respond. So I've
Yeah.
given you a hard I've set you up really in a very difficult position, as is quite common, really. So let's gossip about the rest of the conversation we had then, shall we?
We're all gonna die.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you just didn't want
How's
to
that?
offend anyone by telling them to die.
Yeah, but yeah, like nah, yeah, I'm cautious of time. Um, but like yeah, it feels like this next week is gonna be a very critical week. I'm not working properly, so need to catch up on a lot of work, personal work, my football qualification work, and then also in the gym trying to build a routine again, trying to go to as many Muay Thai classes as possible, like get those lunchtime classes in. Never really attend. Uh, I'm really working on punctuality again. Punctuality's fallen off even worse. I used to go through like a streak of maybe 3 times being early or on time to things, and now I think I'm on a streak of. I normally count this a lot better, but even that I'm late. I think 12 lates in a row for everything.
Hmm.
So like it'll be good to break that streak, some build a streak. I don't know punctuality. I think my maximum is 5. I've been on time five in a row, and that was a cheat day in effect because I had 3 events in the same day, all within the same like realm. So I couldn't really be late. And then I got to Muay Thai on time, and then got back. I was online talking to you on time. So it's 5 things over the course of pretty much one day. And I counted it as 5. So that's fraud. But yeah, just like bubble tea and just like she.
just
uh,
just the fact that you've named two things that don't originate from England, they're fraudulent.
yeah,
just
yeah.
love just
Look,
love it.
are you trying to tell me right now, Joe, that bubble tea places in this country, especially, aren't all money laundering businesses?
I'm not
That's
making
what
a
I
claim
think.
about particular establishments. I do
I'm
not
making that
condone nor
claim.
condemn these businesses.
I am making that claim. I condemn them. Okay. I think that just like all the nail salons that are popping up everywhere, money laundering, I think a bubble tea is fraudulent. Okay. All you get is the white girls going, "Oh, I love bubble tea." Ooh. No, no, you don't. Shut the fuck up. It's gross. Okay, it's gross. Just like your taste in everything, because clearly you love that shit. Okay, you're lying to yourself. You're lying to me. You're lying to Joe. You're lying to the kids. Okay, you're lying to Kendrick. Okay, you just it's all shit. Terrible. Stop it. And you and your lying selves belong on GB News for all the other liars. Yeah, I said it. I said
Truly the most controversial thing that you'll ever say on this podcast.
it. So why are you guys getting divorced, Alex? Well, play the tape.
This is our Joe Rogan shift. This is our this is the shift that we're making.
We need to dissect Terrence Howard. That's all I'm gonna say. That's it.
I mean, I've got an autopsy tape
Wow. Of course you do. Of course you do.
in a Corian.
Dissect of the lies. With that being said.
But this all being said, fuck me.
uh,
All over the place. It's good though.
let's take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the win. See ya.
Ciao.